Thanks very much, everyone, and if you weren't moved by that, then you're made of stone. But can we now turn to a very special segment of the day? We'd like to invite some very special guests to the stage, starting with the Chairman of Fortescue Metals Group, Mr. Andrew Forrest, and he'll be joined by Mr. Noel Pearson, a very eminent Australian, and they will be interviewed by Rania Alkadamani. So we'll conduct this session to get these gentlemen's reflections on this program. Welcome. Thank you.
Where would you like us? Do you want to go in the middle?
How about the rose between two thorns?
The Beauty and the Beast?
Okay, so are we set to go?
Sure.
Thanks very much for joining us here today. Before we start this interview, I want to set some ground rules for our panellists. So the first thing is, we cannot phone a friend. We're all good with that? The second thing is that we actually can't ask the audience any questions. So please refrain from jumping out of your skin to help them answer the hard questions I've got for them today. So it's really great to be here. It's a huge achievement, and it's been a great privilege for me to be part of the team to help put this together. So thank you all for being here. Andrew, a lot of people talk to you about, or you talk to a lot of people about stretch targets. So first of all, what does today mean for Fortescue? And is your executive now going to have to create $5 billion worth of opportunities over the next 3 years in a stretch target?
Thanks, Rania. Look, no matter how hard Rania tries to be with these questions, you know, no one could run a day like this. This is just such a spectacular day. I'm delighted to have Noel here, Marcia, just you guys, all my Indigenous brothers and sisters. I just can't tell you the joy I feel being surrounded by you all, to be here with you, to know that we're standing on our own 2 feet. There's no flash company or flash government handing out cash, which means that ultimately we get lesser and lesser because we rely on it more and more like some drug. You know, here we are standing on strong ground, and I'm just completely delighted. It's a vision come true. It's the wonderful pride I grew up with, which, you know, the advent of the Hawke years and, you know, all the misspent generosity to have these salve window dressing solutions of cash handouts. You know, let's take this as yesterday's mistakes, and let's move on and have tomorrow's heroes, which do mentor, which do create the expectations in the Indigenous communities, which create the expectations across Australian business, and say, look, cash handouts have failed, call it any flash title you want, welfare, royalties, whatever. It weakens every single community who suffers it in the world. You know, it's not just the Indigenous people. You put welfare into any community in the world and it's going to stuff them quick smart. And you know, it's unsurprising it's happened here in Australia. So to me, this is the turning point. I'm not going to say, Nev, march out there and create $5 billion. But
we've got witnesses.
But then again, if he doesn't. But no, what I will say is that this is the future. This is an independent, sustainable, beautiful future for Indigenous people, holding their traditions, holding their customs, never leaving them, having the diehards, you know, the noble, savage, soft thinkers who think, oh no, if an Indigenous person leaves just their knowledge of their beautiful culture and gathers a further knowledge of how to be independent, sustainable and professional and contribute to the modern world, somehow they leave those beautiful traditions and customs behind. Well, I say no. Why are they different to the Chinese or any of the other great races where they hold their customs, they hold their traditions and still compete beautifully in the modern world and therefore enjoy all the advantages of independence of the modern world? That's what today means. A bit long-winded, but that's what it means.
And we've got a lot of the Fortescue team here today and people like Heath who have been totally driven by creating this $1 billion worth of opportunities. What does it mean for this company? This company that's been created over the last 10 years to be the 4th largest iron ore exporter in the world. What does it mean for Fortescue?
I think we've had a few small achievements along the way, but I'd like to say this is probably the big one. You know, when you join Fortescue, you know, be you, an engineer, a draftsperson, or a chief executive, the question comes through, you know, how do you feel about working with Indigenous people? And if the answer's wrong, then, you know, the interview comes to a fairly sharp stop. And but if the answer's right, then it continues on. You know, we are about employing great people who have great heart, but not a soft heart, heart of love and toughness to ensure that we deliver great standards and great returns for our shareholders, our stakeholders, our governments, our communities through performance. And I think when we can bring the Indigenous communities, who, you know, everyone knows I completely love, into our organisation and have them earning it not by the colour of their skin but by the energy of their intellect and the strength of their back, then they're the equal, if not the better, of all of us. And, you know, that's what it means for us to encourage that in our communities and to have ourselves as the crossroads, moving the country away by our own small example from the cash handout mentality, which is so, you know, championed by government and encouraged by them towards business, yet really does nothing apart from create intergenerational despair.
Noel, over to you. You have been a renowned thought leader in Australia on ending Indigenous disparity. But I guess to me, and I think to many people out here, you're not just a thought leader, you're an action man, given all the great work you do up in Cape York. I'd love to get your thoughts on what the most valuable lesson you've learnt in creating change, real change in Indigenous communities.
I mean, at the end of the day, Indigenous Australians have got to take a fair place in their own country. And that means we've got to take a fair place in the economy. But I think Aboriginal Australians know more than most that the doors of opportunity don't always open from the outside. It sometimes requires somebody from the inside to open the doors. And I'm just absolutely astounded at the achievement of FMG and the traditional owners with whom the company works, the businesses that have lined up to take advantage of the opportunities that FMG are providing. It's an absolute paradigm shift. This is a watershed moment in Indigenous Australians all across the country taking a share of their own country. And Andrew is right. The proper place, the dignified place, and the sustainable place for us in our own country is in business, is in real business and the economy, and not in welfare. Now, what you're doing here in Western Australia, which is really a beacon for the rest of the country, is that you're turning philosophy into action. I've been talking uphill and down dale about this for the best part of a decade and a half, and I've not been Robinson Crusoe in that crusade. Marcia Langton and so many other community leaders have been pushing the same message for much longer than I have. But we've never really turned the philosophy into concrete action. This is where I'm just completely astounded at what you've been up to over the last year and a half, mate.
It's my great team.
I was out of the loop, and I didn't understand you were plotting all of this. and I just congratulate you and the Indigenous businesses that you've been working with on what I think, I agree with what Marcia said on the television there. It really is setting a new benchmark for the way in which Indigenous Australians can enter the real economy.
Thank you. Andrew, many of us have been lucky to hear about your relationship with Scotty Black, and I'm taking you back into your history. But if he was here right now, what do you think he would say to you?
Oh, he'd say, "Hey, Nitty, not a bad job, young fella." No, he'd say, he used to put his hand, you know, on my shoulder and back and kind of give me a hug. And, you know, he'd say if I did something right, say a lot if I did something wrong, but he'd say quite short, you know, that was a true man's job. That's being a true man. And it stuck with me forever, and I think he would just put his hand on the back of my shoulder like I want to do to all these fabulous Indigenous leaders and champions in this room, like I want to do to Fortescue, and say, look, that's being really true. That's being who we are. No soft thinking, no short-term fixes, but long-term, sustainable involvement in the economy with your beautiful Aboriginality.
I'm sure he'd be really proud.
Oh, thanks. It's rare coming from Rania.
I know. This is actually a question for both of you, and I often get lectured, by the way, about strong leadership from Andrew. So I'd really love your insights on this. But strong leadership and the community, and just how important is it for strong leadership in communities to actually effect change? You've had a lot of experience with this, Noel, and you too, Andrew. But what is it that makes strong leadership, and is that the secret to actually creating what we have here today?
I mean, I think absolutely, but I think strong leadership always resonates. Strong leadership is shared leadership. Strong leadership connects with people at all levels. And the message that myself and so many others have been pushing about a real change in direction for our people right across this continent is a message that ordinary people in these communities also harbour. They have a conviction. I've never met many Aboriginal people who don't understand that welfare is an absolute poison. And the message really is one that resonates with elders, with young people, and some of the, what I'm completely in awe of are the young business leaders that have emerged, particularly in this state. I'm just astounded at the number of people who are not mucking around in politics and organisational dramas and so on. They're seriously pursuing business. And at the end of the day, that is where our salvation lies. When we realise that pursuing your own interests, building your own wealth for yourself and your own family and for your community, when we sanctify that, that is the day we're going to develop. When we understand that it is proper and correct that we pursue our own wealth, we can't be ashamed of that. If you want development, it's about accumulating something better for yourself, for your family, and for your community, and for your people. And I see what FMG have done with opening the doors from the inside and let $1 billion worth of opportunity come in. Those people are going to be there to open the doors to the next mob. When these businesses mature, they're going to have the power of door opening. And the virtuous circle will just keep building. And, the scary thing is that Andrew has now really set the benchmark for everybody else.
I think it's really about leadership. I'm now really saying to the heads of the public service departments who are out there still justifying spending hundreds of millions of precious taxpayers' funds on training where there isn't a job at the end. Now we've got the Employment Covenant Generation 1 with 60,000 jobs out there. I'm saying to not only the ministers or the current Prime Minister or whoever's the next, but to those leaders in the public service. There was a reason why you trained for training's sake. And that's because it was slightly better than nothing. But the fact you perpetuate it now is perpetuating an evil when there's a much better alternative. Have the courage to stand up to your subordinates and those who are set in their ways of just doling out millions of dollars to training programs where there's no jobs because there's now an alternative. There's 330 members of Australia's business community, of which we are but one, who are out there guaranteeing 60,000+ jobs. And I want to just make that message really strongly. And then I turn to my loved ones in the Indigenous community, many who don't agree with me at all and say, actually, we just want cash handouts. But I say, look squarely at what those cash handouts have done for your community. Look beyond the fact that it'll empower you politically, personally, the fact that that cash handout, be it royalties or government welfare, whatever it is going to flow through your fingers. Step back from that power and think of your children. Think that if they, like every other child in the world, doesn't get the opportunity nor the expectation to make their own living, then they won't. Simple. No matter how you dress it up, if you give them that money without them earning it, they're not going to respect you or money. And so I really ask, like the elders in the communities across the Pilbara and across Australia, start reaching out and demanding these opportunities and then looking to your people and expecting them to rise. And don't be tolerant. Don't be tolerant. Don't think you're being kind. It's misplaced when children are not sent to school. Don't think it's okay. Don't look the other way, elders. Complain heavily to the headmasters and the teachers when they don't deliver the education or they don't scold children for not coming to school. And we as a nation lift our expectations and walk forever from the racism of low expectations which has plagued us. And that's the leadership which I want to see in every community, every elder, every school teacher, every headmaster, every public servant, and every minister of government. And of course, I'll demand it from every chief executive and chairman in the business community.
Thank you. One final question, and this is for you, Noel. If Kevin Rudd or Tony Abbott were both here today, and the next thing that you said was going to definitely become policy, it's all been budget costed, everything, absolutely. They're going to implement it if one of them becomes Prime Minister on September 7th. What is that in terms of Indigenous relations?
Well, I think, plainly from what I've said, that it is economic empowerment that at the end of the day represents a viable future for our people. And so every effort that is aimed at increasing the employment and business participation of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in their own country is the policy to which we must turn all our efforts. I think when we launched the Australian Employment Covenant 5 years ago, there was a real momentum for pursuing economic participation. What's happened with the billion opportunities here, the great line from the television coverage we saw there, is the huge multiplier effect of Indigenous businesses in achieving our employment goals. That's certainly our experience as well. Wherever there's an Aboriginal business operating, the employment rates are very high and relatively easy to secure. And so I just see that this agenda that you're launching here today to celebrate $1 billion worth of contract opportunities for Indigenous businesses is really adding to that vision we had 5 years ago of pursuing jobs for our people. And everything that the national government that wins the next election does has got to shift from more talk about service delivery and welfare and everything else towards an agenda of economic empowerment. And I think today the way is being shown.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Ronnie.
Well done.
Well done, Brian.
Thank you.